Key points. Climate change omission in IMF strategy. Nathan Porter's article on Pakistan's economic reform, tied to the Extended Fund Facility, EFF, overlooked the critical issue of climate change. Given Pakistan's vulnerability to climate disasters, this gap in the IMF's approach to economic turnaround is concerning. Climate resilience and fiscal policy. Pakistan's fiscal policy does not currently support climate resilience or mitigation, despite the country's susceptibility to climate-triggered disasters like the 2022 floods, which caused $30 billion in damage. This demonstrates the potential for future climate-related shocks to derail economic progress. Need for reforms. Pakistan must implement reforms that balance economic growth with climate resilience. This requires integrating climate risks into budgetary, fiscal, and debt management processes, as well as strengthening access to climate finance, both domestically and internationally. Linking fiscal policy to climate risks. Fiscal policy must incorporate climate considerations to avoid the trade-off between short-term financial stability and long-term resilience investments. Pakistan's Debt Management Office and the Planning Commission should integrate climate-related risks into their strategies and work with the IMF on climate capacity-building programs. IMF's role in climate finance. The IMF has recently become involved in shaping global climate discourse. Countries like Barbados are already accessing the IMF's Resilience and Sustainability Trust to build climate resilience, and Pakistan should seek similar opportunities. Holistic approach to economic reform. For Pakistan to secure its economic future, it must harmonize fiscal, debt, and climate strategies. Ignoring climate risks could undermine the proposed economic revitalization and exacerbate poverty in vulnerable regions. Crux, in simple words, the IMF's recent discussion on Pakistan's economic reforms missed a crucial point: climate change. Pakistan is highly vulnerable to climate disasters, and ignoring these risks could ruin economic progress. To tackle this, Pakistan needs to make sure its economic plans include climate protection strategies. This means changing how we manage our budget and debts and finding new ways to access climate finance. The IMF, though late in addressing climate issues, has started helping countries build resilience against climate impacts. Pakistan must follow suit and make climate resilience a core part of its economic reforms, or risk facing bigger challenges in the future. Key points. Reza Bakir's appointment as consultant. The government's recruitment of former State Bank Governor Reza Bakir to advise on a sovereign wealth fund, SWF, raises concerns, given his limited experience in organizational development and his controversial tenure at the State Bank. Bakir's tenure at State Bank. Bakir became governor during a period of economic turmoil marked by high inflation and balance of payments issues. His aggressive monetary policy, which raised interest rates to 13.25%, was met with strong opposition, particularly from the business community. Despite this, the tight monetary stance helped bring down inflation temporarily. COVID-19's impact. The arrival of COVID-19 in 2020 drastically changed the economic landscape. Pakistan received emergency funds, slashed interest rates to 7%, and introduced stimulus measures. This led to a rapid and surprising economic rebound, with growth reaching 7%. However, this growth was short-lived and dependent on temporary factors. Policy missteps. After the brief post-COVID growth, signs of instability emerged in 2021, but Bakir and the government hesitated to adjust monetary policy accordingly. This led to a renewed inflation crisis by late 2021, which Bakir blamed on global factors, though Pakistan's inflation far exceeded regional averages. Inflation crisis. By the time Bakir left his position in 2022, Pakistan was grappling with severe inflation, partly due to monetary policies under his leadership, which had emphasized large-scale money printing. Pakistan's inflation in 2023 was over 25%, much higher than its South Asian peers' average of 7%. Concerns about sovereign wealth fund. Given his track record, Bakir's new role advising on the creation of an SWF raises concerns that his previous monetary policies could repeat past mistakes, particularly with inflation management and financial oversight. Crux, in simple words, the appointment of Reza Bakir as a consultant to help create Pakistan's sovereign wealth fund has raised eyebrows. His time as governor of the state bank was marked by controversial monetary policies that initially brought down inflation but eventually led to a serious inflation crisis. Many blame his decisions, particularly large-scale money printing and delayed interest rate hikes, for Pakistan's current economic woes. As Bakir steps into this new advisory role, some fear he might repeat past mistakes, potentially creating further challenges for Pakistan's economy. Key points. Execution in distress. Pakistan often plans events meticulously, but political or logistical hurdles frequently lead to last-minute disruptions, as seen with past Lahore literary festivals and, more recently, the Lahore Biennale 2024, which was impacted by political protests. Lahore Biennale 2024. Despite over a year of planning, the Biennale's opening faced major disruptions due to a political Dharna protest, forcing a rescheduling of events. The exhibition spanned historical sites like Shalimar Gardens and Lahore Fort, but the meticulous planning had to be rearranged at short notice. Historical art exhibition, a prelude to the Biennale, featured an art exhibition in Ved Mehta's childhood home, now a relic of its past. It showcased art in different rooms of the house, highlighting Lahore's rich history through personal stories, films, and cultural nostalgia. Shireen Pasha's film, Lahore's past was vividly captured in a film by Shireen Pasha, blending everyday life in the old city with artistic depictions. It portrayed iconic Lahori scenes, including wrestlers, kite flying, and traditional naans, while giving a glimpse of a younger Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. Contrasts in government spending. While the Lahore Biennale faced political disruption, the government focused on high-profile international events, like the SEO Summit in Islamabad, where lavish spending on VIP vehicles and protocol duties stood in stark contrast to the country's economic struggles. IMF loans and extravagance. Despite securing a $7 billion loan from the IMF, Pakistan's government continues to spend extravagantly on luxury vehicles for officials, echoing historical instances of ostentatious hospitality, such as during the 1974 Islamic Summit in Lahore. Crux, in simple words, events in Pakistan are often well planned but poorly executed due to political and logistical issues. The recent Lahore Biennale was disrupted by political protests, but organizers persevered. In contrast, the government continues lavish spending on VIP protocols for international events, despite the country's economic hardships, showcasing a recurring pattern of misplaced priorities. Key points. Children's mental health in Gaza. The ongoing conflict in Gaza, which has killed over 42,000 people, has left children in a state of severe psychological distress. Prolonged exposure to violence, airstrikes, and displacement has caused deep trauma, particularly among children, many of whom have lost their homes, families, and sense of security. Impact of war on mental health. Gaza's children, who have lived through repeated assaults since 2008, are experiencing various mental health disorders, including post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, anxiety, and depression. Constant re-traumatization from daily violence has placed them in a state of toxic stress. Studies and research. Numerous studies, including one by Iman Farajala in 2016, highlight the psychological toll of war on Palestinian children. Symptoms such as aggression, nightmares, hyperactivity, and bedwetting are common, as well as signs of deeper emotional and psychological trauma, including fear, loneliness, and depression. Disruption of education and development. The destruction of schools and recreational facilities has also significantly impacted children's education and cognitive development. The loss of opportunities to explore their talents and interests adds to their sense of hopelessness. Interventions and long-term solutions. While mental health interventions are necessary, true healing can only begin once peace is restored in the region. The collapse of Gaza's healthcare system means that treatment for these children is impossible until the war ends and infrastructure is rebuilt. Crux, in simple words. The conflict in Gaza has had a devastating impact on children's mental health, with many suffering from trauma and psychological disorders due to the violence and loss they've experienced. Studies show that these children face long-term emotional damage, and their education and development are severely disrupted. While mental health interventions are crucial, real recovery is only possible when peace and stability return to the region. Key points. World Mental Health Day 2024. Theme. This year's theme, Mental Health at Work, highlights the importance of addressing mental well-being in professional settings. It emphasizes the responsibility of workplaces to foster environments that support mental health, both for ethical and economic reasons. Impact of poor mental health at work. Inadequate attention to mental health at work can lead to issues like burnout, anxiety, and depression, all of which hinder both personal and professional success. On the other hand, healthy workplaces can enhance employee well-being and productivity. Pakistan's mental health crisis. Approximately 20 million people in Pakistan suffer from mental disorders, yet mental health remains a stigmatized topic, especially in workplaces. Many employees face job insecurity, excessive workloads, and a lack of mental health resources, which exacerbates their stress and makes them reluctant to seek help. Economic consequences. Poor mental health in the workplace affects national productivity, as untreated mental health issues lead to absenteeism, reduced efficiency, and high turnover rates. This is especially critical for a developing country like Pakistan, where economic pressures are already significant. Lack of institutional support. Unlike developed countries, Pakistan lacks comprehensive policies and programs to address mental health in the workplace. There is a need for legislative reforms and a cultural shift to promote mental health awareness and support in professional environments. Post-pandemic challenges. The COVID-19 pandemic blurred the lines between personal and professional life, especially in sectors with remote work, increasing stress levels. This further underscores the need for employers to prioritize mental health in the workplace. Call to action. On World Mental Health Day, the focus must be on initiating conversations about mental health in the workplace and implementing solutions to create a more inclusive and healthier workforce. Crux, in simple words, World Mental Health Day 2024 calls attention to the need for mental health support in workplaces. In Pakistan, where 20 million people suffer from mental disorders, mental health at work remains largely ignored, contributing to stress and reduced productivity. Addressing this issue is crucial to creating healthier, more efficient workplaces, and the time for action is now. Key points. Post-election scenario in India held Kashmir. Following the polls, the Pro-India National Conference, NC, in alliance with Congress, is set to form the next government in the disputed region, with the BJP finishing second. Despite being the BJP's best electoral performance in the region, the election results highlight the dissatisfaction of Kashmiris with India's policies. BJP's electoral gains. The BJP's improved performance is attributed to the 2022 delimitation, or redrawing of electoral boundaries, which many see as gerrymandering. This process increased seats in Hindu-majority areas while diminishing representation in Muslim-majority regions, further aiming to alter the demographics of the area in favor of BJP's right-wing ideology. Fairness of elections questioned. The elections are clouded by the fact that many Hurriyat leaders remain imprisoned, and Yasin Malik, a veteran leader, is serving a life sentence after a controversial trial. Despite these factors, the elections show Kashmir's opposition to New Delhi's oppressive rule, especially following the revocation of the region's autonomy in 2019. NC's campaign promise. The National Conference campaigned on restoring Article 370, which granted Kashmir special status, and reversing the revocation of the region's autonomy. Need for dialogue. Hurriyat leader Mirwais Umar Farooq emphasized that only meaningful dialogue between the people of Kashmir, India, and Pakistan can resolve the issue. Elections are not a substitute for a genuine tripartite political process. India's role moving forward. The piece urges the Indian government to restore Kashmir's autonomy, release political prisoners, engage in a sustained dialogue with Pakistan and all Kashmiri political factions to seek a peaceful solution. Crux, in simple words. The recent elections in Indian-held Kashmir show the people's dissatisfaction with India's policies, even as the BJP gained ground through controversial redistricting. However, a lasting solution to the Kashmir issue requires meaningful dialogue between Kashmir, India, and Pakistan, rather than just elections. The Indian government should consider restoring Kashmir's autonomy and beginning peace talks. Key points and crux. Finance Minister's confidence. The Finance Minister remains committed to implementing IMF-agreed reforms, signaling strong resolve at the highest level of economic policy. Macroeconomic stability. After months of financial turmoil, the country has achieved a degree of stability, seen as a positive development. Concerns over political strife. Both the finance minister and prime minister have expressed concern that political instability could endanger economic progress, with the prime minister saying, "We will not tolerate it." Risk of repression. Their stance could be interpreted as a justification for further political repression, risking greater instability. Government's role in instability. The government must acknowledge its own role in creating political instability, which has complicated economic reforms. Shift from blame to engagement. Blaming the opposition entirely won't solve issues. It may alienate the public further, making reforms harder to implement. Need for political dialogue. Sustainable economic progress requires political engagement, dialogue, and negotiation, not force or repression. Crux. While economic reforms are crucial, the government's focus must shift from blaming political opponents to fostering dialogue and stability. Only by engaging with political challenges constructively can long-term economic gains be secured.